Welcome everyone to Farm's Weekly Wednesday webinar. As you know, these webinars are sponsored every Wednesday by Farms and a grant from the Otto Bremer Foundation. We have Annie Carlson back with us again today. She's going to talk about backyard chickens. We're all excited because this is kind of on the heels of the pullet webinar she did a couple weeks ago. So by the time we're done, we're going to know all about how to raise our own chickens for eggs and meat. So I will allow Annie to introduce herself. Just remember, everyone will be muted during the webinar. If you want to have a conversation, you can use the chat box on the lower right of your interface screen, and or wait until the end when we will open it up for questions and Annie can talk to you personally. She's pretty good at seeing the questions pop up in the chat box and is capable of doing more than one thing at once. And so if she answers your question right away, that's fine by me too. So we are being recorded. The recording will be available on our YouTube site after we finish it and get it uploaded, and I will send you all a link for that. And with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Annie Carlson from Morning Joy Farm, and we're going to have her, I'm going to change presenters here, and as soon as she shows us her screen, when she's ready to rock and roll, she has my permission to begin. I will mute myself now also.
Hello everyone, my name is Ann. I'm from Morning Joy Farm. We're located 50 miles straight north of Bismarck near Mercer. This is my parents' farm, my grandparents' farm. My husband and I bought the farm from my folks in November of 12. So we've been here, this is our third year now, 3 winters, and we raise grass-based meats. So we raise pastured poultry. That's still our centerpiece enterprise. We do broilers and laying hens and pastured turkeys. We've done geese in the past. We're not doing those this year, but my daughter is getting ducks for eggs, and so we'll start with some waterfowl production this year too with my 7-year-old. And so we also raise grass-fed lamb. We're in the midst of lambing right now. We're almost half done lambing, which is early for us, but they're doing great. The lambs are really doing well. And we have a grass-fed dairy cow, and she's due to calve in June. And what else do we have? Oh, we have pastured pork. We have 17 pigs that we've overwintered, and then we're getting another 45 to 60 this spring. And so we direct market all of our products from the farm, and through Buying Club, Farmers Market, Meat CSA. That's about it. We also have an on-farm commercial kitchen. That's the latest thing. And so I do some catering and value adding of our products through the kitchen. But today we're going to talk about backyard chickens. And as I sit in my office right now, my desk is right in front of our window, and I am watching 1, 2, 3 hens at the moment out scratching and pecking in our yard. So our chickens are housed in a hoop house for the winter, and since spring is here, hopefully for good, we kind of open the doors to the hoop house and let the chickens kind of free range for about a month. That helps clean up our yard, helps them kind of straighten things out and scratch around for some insects and stuff, and then we'll gather them up, and then they'll go follow the flerd when they're out grazing. And so they're all free ranging right now, and like I said, I'm watching them right outside my window, scratching and pecking. So let's talk about how backyard birds can save the planet. And we can do that by getting some country chicks into the city. So the topics we're going to talk about today, this is one of our hens. This has been used on a lot of farms' media publications. I love this chicken. She's a Rhode Island Red, and so we really like those girls. They're doing a good job for us. Today we're going to talk about why do people keep chickens? Why are people interested in this? Why might you be interested in this? We're going to talk about housing. How do I hold my chickens? Where do I put them? We're going to talk about feed. We're going to talk about choosing your chicks and how to get your hands on some chickens. And we're going to talk about brooding and growing. And we're going to talk about eggs. And lastly, some frequently asked questions that maybe didn't fit into any of the above categories. So let's first start about why chickens. Why are we going to talk about chickens? Who would be interested in chickens? What do we need to consider if we are interested in chickens? The first list of reasons, and usually why people really want them, is the fresh eggs. There's nothing like a fresh egg. straight from the farm, straight from people that you know and hens that you know. Another reason people often get chickens is to instill care and responsibility in children. Chickens are really easy to keep. Um, they were the first animal that my husband, who was never raised with any livestock on his farm, and I just laugh at him and say, "Oh, honey, that's not a real farm." He was never raised with any livestock, and so he started with chickens, broilers, and laying hens. And he was kind of saddened. I don't know if sad is the right word, but he was disappointed that there wasn't a lot of relationship building, with chickens. And I told him, like, if you want a relationship with an animal, you need to have something with a brain larger than a pea. So chickens are great for children. They're small. They're not overly smart. They're easily trained. They're not going to outthink the children, and they get eggs. It's really a great way. For the third point is the connection to see how food is produced. You know that you're feeding these hens, and those hens are in turn feeding you. So it's not just a pet on that level. You're not just feeding your dog, but you're feeding a chicken, and that chicken is in turn feeding you. And so it really promotes that connection to food and its production. It also is self-sufficiency. You're raising part of your own food, and you're collecting that food every day. Entertainment value, like I said, we have our chickens free ranging at the moment, and a rooster just marched across my field of view here, and so he's on the hunt for some hens. He's looking for a little springtime lovin', and so they're highly entertaining. Chickens have personalities. You have some that are the boss and some that are the underlings. A lot of popular colloquialisms that we have in our language come from the raising of chickens. For example, the term henpecked. Hens can be worse than junior high girls in establishing a pecking order. And so that's where the term henpecked came from, pecking order. That's where those terms come from, is the social behavior and entertainment of chickens. And lastly, a lot of people like to have chickens because they utilize waste from your kitchen, from your garden. They will process that waste into eggs and meat. And they also provide a waste stream in the form of fertilizer. And you can compost that and put that into your garden or your plants, or you can sell it to friends and neighbors, and beautiful compost that they can use. So a lot of different reasons why people get into chickens. This may be your reason, it may not be. But these are the 6 most popular reasons that people want a few hens in their backyard. Let's talk about housing. So there's lots of plans available. If you Google chicken house or chicken housing and click on images, there's thousands upon thousands of them. I mean, there are as many different ways to house chickens as there are chickens. So don't be tied into one particular method or management. We keep ours, like I said, in the winter in the hoop house. We call it our hoop coop. And then in the summer, they're out. Their home base is a stock trailer that we've turned into a mobile egg mobile. And so, those are the 2 types of housing that we have for our birds. We live on a farm. We have 130 some hens. So what we use for housing is very different from what someone in their backyard would with 3 hens or a half a dozen hens. So this is one similar to this. They come in a kit. I think TSC has been selling them, backyard chicken kits. They hold, 3 or 4 hens, probably at the most. And I put this one on here because it has basically everything you're looking for in a chicken housing, no matter if you have, like us, 130 hens or if you have 3. So you want some type of shelter that's protected where they can rest. And so you want it to be secure. Both, you don't want predators to get in to harm your chickens, and you also want it to be secure that your hens aren't out roaming around. So you want them to be secure and also to keep them safe from predators. You want it well ventilated. So chickens, their manure is very liquid. They don't pee necessarily. There's no urine separate from fecal material like there is in, say, a cow. Chickens put it all together into their waste. And so their waste has a higher moisture content than most other animals. So you want it well ventilated because it tends to get damp just from the respiration of the chickens, and also their fecal material has more water to it. So you want it well ventilated. You want plenty of bedding. Their fecal material, their poop, has a lot higher nitrogen content than the ruminants. And so you want to be able to capture that nitrogen with carbon. And so you want to use high carbon bedding. And by high carbon bedding, I mean wood flakes, like pine flakes is a great one. We use that in our brooder. Um, you can also use hay or straw. Um, we have gotten friendly with our REC, our Rural Electric Cooperative tree trimmers, and whenever they're in our area working, John has told them, please come dump your wood chips at our farm. They no longer have to haul them back to their regular spot. They can just bring them to our farm and continue working. So we have a nice supply of wood chips. We throw wood chips into our hoop coop in the wintertime. And here's the rule of thumb. Anytime you can smell the nitrogen, the ammonia smell, it'll be like an ammonia smell. Anytime you can smell that, you don't have enough bedding down. You don't have enough bedding to capture all the ammonia, and therefore it's leaching into the air as it evaporates. And so we want to capture all of that. That is money in the bank. That fertility is very important. And so we want to capture all of that with the carbon bedding. So we are always hauling in bedding. John has also gotten some screenings from one of the local elevators. They do a really good job of screening their seed in the spring. And then, so there's not a lot of grain in it. It's a lot of chaff and a lot of weed seeds. And so John gets that for next to nothing. And he brings that home and we shovel that into the hoop coop. One, it's great carbon because there's a lot of the chaff in it. And two, the weed seeds in are real treats for the chickens, and they love to scratch around and find them. So you want bedding to be a practical purpose to capture that waste, but you also want your bedding to kind of provide a little entertainment for your chickens, something for them to do, something for them to scratch at and peck through. So we will sometimes sprinkle grain in before we bust a bale open and sprinkle some hay in there. We prefer hay over straw. Chickens like to eat roughage. They like to eat forage. And so they'll eat hay easier, the green leaf stuff. They really like alfalfa. That's a big treat for them. And so we line our nest boxes with hay, and then the extra gets scattered on the floor for them to pick through and eat on. And then we also try and put that chaff in there and wood chips. So give them a nice mix of materials, and they can scratch around and look for treats in that. You also want to have roosts in your housing, no matter if you've got 2 chickens or 200. If you look in the door that has the window in it, that little bar across there, that's the roost for this house. You want to have an access door for you, and so that you can get at your chickens. This one has the nest boxes off the end, so you can lift a lid and get the eggs straight out of the nest boxes. Ours, you walk in because we have 21 nest boxes, so we walk in and get them out of the hoop house or the trailer. Chickens don't usually dig, so you don't need a floor to whatever you have. This one is movable. This one you'd move around your yard. I have some pictures coming up of stationary chicken houses, and it's up to you, whatever you'd like to do. I always am in favor of movable. They like green, they like the green grass. They're a great way to fertilize your lawn and de-thatch it with their feet. Daniel Salton says the chickens have a rake on the end of their feet, and that's absolutely true. And so I'm always in favor of having a movable structure versus a permanent one. But let's take a look. Here's one that's fairly permanent, and it is movable, but it's a little more difficult to move. So this one, you want to have access point for your chickens, which is the ramp there, and then you want an access point for you, which is the door. The nest boxes are on the right-hand side. And then there also is an access point for people with that big door in the chicken run. Feed and water is there too, you can see. This one's a little fancier, and this one is they have the run on the bottom, and then they climb up and roost, and have the nest boxes. The nest boxes for this one are under the side gables there, the sides with the shingles, you lift those up, and those are the nest boxes. So this one's a little fancier, a little, if you're in town and want something pretty cute, this one will work. And this one keeps the chickens down below, and then they go up to roost and lay their eggs. So pretty compact design on that one. Nesting boxes, they don't have to be fancy. These are some you can order. They're just a plastic that you bolt to the wall, and they're self-contained unit. You just bolt them on. You want them bedded. Chickens they like to make their nest. Like we talk about nesting when pregnant woman is starting to clean her house or whatever. We call that nesting. Again, another popular colloquialism related to chickens. Chickens like to nest. They want to get in that nest and they talk. And they rearrange the straw and put it just the way they like it, and then they lay their egg. Just like a woman gets her house clean and makes things the way the nursery before she has a baby. So the nesting comes from natural behavior of chickens. So you want hay or straw. Some people use sand. Some people use pine flake. We don't use that for bedding in the nest boxes because chickens like to be able to pick it up and move it and arrange it the way they want. And they can't pick up the bedding as easily. They obviously can't pick up sand, but they can't pick up the flake as easily and put it where they want it. It's a lot easier for them to maneuver straw or hay than it is a piece of wood flake. So we like to use hay or straw. There are some nest boxes that have just a pad in them that's like a piece of astroturf, and then they kind of roll out to a roll-out box, they're called. We don't use those either, just because we want the hens to be as natural as possible and the feel as natural as possible. And if you've walked on AstroTurf versus real grass, there's a difference. And even though chickens have the brain the size of a pea, they are not fooled either. And so we want just as natural environment as possible. So we don't use the AstroTurf rollout boxes. It's not comfortable for us. It's not comfortable for the chickens. You want them kept clean. We have a chicken or two that tend to poop in the nest boxes. I don't know why, but they do. So we have tubs, just those cheap dishwashing tubs. That's what make up our nest boxes. And so we can take one out and dump it out, clean it if we need to. If an egg gets broken in there, we can wash out the tub, and keep them clean. So you want well bedded, kept clean in case something should happen. The cleaner your nest boxes are, the cleaner your eggs are going to be. You want to gather your eggs every day. If it's cold in the wintertime, we try and gather 2 or 3 times a day just so they don't freeze in the nest boxes. You can use a frozen egg for household use. We sell a lot of eggs. This month we've sold over 100 dozen eggs. So I can't let them all freeze. If you were to have just a few backyard hens and your eggs would happen to freeze, you can still use them. They're absolutely fine to use, but we just don't sell them. Don't let them roost in the nest boxes. They want to get to their highest point. So that's where they feel safe as a roost. And so you'll see more of your chickens roosting on the highest level of your roost. We'll talk about roosts coming up. And so nest boxes might be that thing. So if you have your nest boxes mounted, you may need to put them closer to the floor than up high, because they'll want to roost in them if they're higher than the roost they can get at. Here's a couple of other nesting boxes. The one on the left, this one is a fancy schmancy little chicken house. She wallpapered the walls of her chicken house, and yeah, she kind of went overboard. But the nest boxes are very simple, and it just a simple wood construction. They don't have to be fancy. The one on the right is just a 5-gallon bucket tipped on its side. So it doesn't have to be anything fancy, anything, you don't have to spend a lot of money on it. It can be very simple. I've seen file crates, that go on sale for $2 at back to school sales. I've seen those tipped on their sides, used as nest boxes very effectively. You just want some type of kind of enclosed space that a hen feels safe and she'll lay her egg. How many nest boxes do you need is a common question. You need 1 nest box for every 8 hens is the guideline. We have 21 nest boxes. We have 130 hens. That's just how it worked out. So we could get 160 hens in this current setup with our 21 nest boxes, 168 to be exact. But we want to have at least 2 nest boxes. So even if you only have 2 chickens, you should have 2 nest boxes, because sometimes one of the hens can get territorial and she can get crabby, and she will, if you only have 1 nest box, she will sit in the nest box and not let anybody else in. And so we like to have 2 nest boxes just so that one can't get bossy no matter how many chickens you may have. You always want to have 2 nest boxes as your minimum. Roosting. Chickens love to roost. It's how they feel safe. They don't have to roost. The first 2 or 3 years we had our hoop house, we didn't have a roost in our hoop house. And technically right now we don't either. We have a platform that we've built to increase the surface area, the floor surface area, because our hoop house is overstocked. And so the added surface area keeps our stocking rate down in our hoop house. That's for another hoop house discussion of poultry. But you do want to have a place that they can get up and sleep. And so the one up on the left, she is right at the top. She's ready to go to bed. And the bottom one, she's like the kid who just can't seem to be quiet and go to sleep. So you want plenty of roost space. You want more roost space than you have chickens. And so it kind of depends on the breed of chicken, how much roost space you're going to need. But measure the width of your chicken. So feather to feather, not wingtip to wingtip, but wing to wing, the size of your chicken. So we raise, right now we have Rhode Island Reds and Buff Orpingtons. The chicks that are coming are Barred Rocks. They're all about the same size. They're about a 5 to 6 pound hen. And so we want to allocate basically a foot per bird of roost space so that she can get up on the roost, she can turn around, and she can sit down. And so the pecking order also extends to the roost. And you want to make sure you have enough space so that the more submissive hens, the ones at the bottom of the pecking order, still have space to roost. Otherwise, the dominant hens will take the roost space and everybody else is kind of on their own. Poop. Make sure you put your roost where you are fine with there being poop. The favorite thing of a chicken when they get on their roost, before they go to bed and right when they wake up in the morning, is to poop. So I saw just the other day, somebody posted on Facebook, the poop hammock, and it's basically like a canvas sheet with 2 wooden sticks on the ends that you hang under your chicken roosts and then gather the poop and then take that out and put it where you want it, rather than having to clean out your chicken house. Interesting. I wouldn't do it with our 130 hens, but if you have a small number, effective way to manage the poop. So make sure your roosts are the part of your chicken house that's easiest to clean. If you look at the roosts that I have pictured here, another reason I chose this picture is that the roosts are removable. So they're just tree limbs that are fairly straight, and then they have a hole on the left side that the end is put into, and they have a notch on the right side that they can easily take them out and shovel under there or rake under there to get it clean. So it's a great idea to have removable roosts that you can get in and clean out. Pardon me. So make sure that you have a place where you can manage the poop. The ability to clean it, wipe it off. It doesn't have to be scrubbed with bleach or anything, but just sometimes there's poop on it. You have to scrape it off, etc. You want rounded edges on your roost material. It would be really easy to say, I'm going to rip a 2x2 and that's going to be the roost. You want to round those edges, just like if you were holding a piece of wood for a long time, the edges would be painful after a while. The pressure, you want to even out that pressure on their feet. So they're going to be sleeping on that roost, gripping it with their toes all night long. So you want to make it as comfortable for them as possible. So you want some rounded edges. So you can take tree limbs like these people did, already rounded, very natural, easy to use. We have taken 2x2s and then run a router down the side just to take that edge off. And so a lot of different ways to get a rounded edge on your roost, but you do want to have that rounded aspect just to give their feet some comfort and They're on it all night long. Let's talk about feed. Any questions so far? If you have one, put it in the chat box. I'll see it and I'll answer it. Let's talk about feed. A lot of discussion about feeds and where to get feed and what to feed. This is just a simple feeder. You can get these at your local farm store. The difference between a feeder and a waterer is that the feeder will have the kind of the spokes that come out from this feeder. That's to prevent billing out. And so billing out is termed when the chickens want the tastiest morsels, and they will push aside any piece that isn't the tastiest morsel, and that means they tend to waste feed. And so these little plastic spokes in this particular feeder help prevent the billing out of feed so they don't waste it. You can feed a commercial feed. Every farm store has a layer ration. I think Purina's is called Layerina or something like that. It's weird. Anyway, so there's lots of different commercial rations that you can feed. They're all complete feeds. They have the salt and the mineral and stuff in that with it. You do need to provide oyster shell, which we'll talk about in a minute with commercial feed. You can feed whole grains. That's what we feed our laying hens. Their diet changes. In the wintertime, we will add flax. Right now, I should tell you, what are chickens being fed right now? They're getting whole triticale, which is a relative of wheat. They're getting pea screenings, which means they're getting the little pea chips that come, when a pea breaks apart, and also all the weed seeds that come in the peas. And the weed seeds actually have higher protein and nutritional value than any grain you can feed them. So we love screenings for our poultry and our pork too, but primarily the poultry. We really like feeding them the screenings for those seeds. Those weed seeds are more valuable as a feed source than the grain is. So they're getting whole triticale, they're getting pea chips and the screenings. They're getting some flax. And what we've found is that right this time of the year when we've turned them outside, they quit eating the flax. So they're getting whatever they need in their diet from the outside, and they're not eating the flax. So we feed our chickens, we just call it free choice. So they have one feeder that's filled with triticale and two that are filled with pea screenings. And they choose what they want to eat. So, then they have also one with flax. So they choose what they want to eat and how much of it, and we let them make that decision. We do not mix it as a ration and make them eat it all. We also don't grind the feed. Chickens have a gizzard. It's their grinder. We want to make sure they have plenty of grit when they're growing as a chick. We talked about it in the brooding class. And we continue that with our hens. That's why we're letting them free range now, letting them stock up on their grit. We'll also supplement with some grit, and I'll talk about that when we talk about the supplements. But we feed whole grains. We do not grind our layer rations. They have a grinder called their gizzard, and so we don't need to do that extra work for them. A lot of people will feed a commercial feed and then add in some whole grains and kind of cut that commercial feed with whole grains, and that's perfectly acceptable. I see we have a question. Do you find the weed seeds add to weeds in your tunnel then? No, this is our tunnel management. So we keep the chickens in until about this time of the year, and then we'll go in and scrape off the top bedding layer. The compost we want to keep. So we want to take off the stuff that's still bedding and leave the compost in the bottom. So we'll take off that with a skid steer, and then we'll put that out on our compost pile to finish composting. So we'll take that top layer off. That's where we find a lot of the still active weed seeds. The rest have been composted either through the chicken's digestive tract, which nothing survives a chicken digestive tract. And so if your chickens are eating it and not wasting, you don't have weeds because they will completely utilize the seed. It's not viable after it goes through a chicken. Same as through a sheep or a goat or a rabbit. All of those digestive tracts completely break apart the weed seeds, and so once it's gone through those animals, it's no longer viable. The part where you may get into trouble is if they're wasting that feed. So having a good feeder that prevents them from billing out is a great way to manage the weed seeds. But we don't see it in our high tunnel mainly because I mulch heavily in the high tunnel. And so anything that escapes the chicken or the skid steer gets mulched out. So yeah, we have some weeds, but not any more than we would normally. I'll talk about mineral and salt in just a minute, Ariana, but yes, I will be covering that, and we do. So garden and kitchen scraps are a great way to feed chickens. I caution people, I don't know, there is a movement afoot that they want to develop these chickens, or people who believe that chickens should just fend for themselves and we shouldn't have to feed them grain at all. And well, yeah, in theory, yes, chickens, evolved in the jungle. They're technically jungle fowl. Yes, they should be able to fend for themselves, but so should humans. And humans are procuring their food in different ways. And I think if you want to have healthy, happy, productive chickens, you do need to provide them with a feed source, whether that be grains or a commercial feed, etc. But I will tell you that when we open the door and let these hens out to free range around the yard, their feed consumption dramatically dropped. So we always want to offer feed. We always want to have feed in front of them. We don't want to ration them. They're only getting a bucket of feed a day, and I don't care whether you eat it or not. No, we always want to have plenty of feed in front of them. We never want to have an empty feeder in our laying hens. Broilers, yes, they do need to have an empty feeder. But when we're talking about laying hens, they should always have feeders available. Food should always be available to them. But when you can supplement with fresh forage, if you're going to rotate them around your yard, if you have a great fence and you can free range them in your backyard, they will not eat as much grain or feed as they would if they weren't having those other things available. So when you're adding garden and kitchen scraps, you don't want to completely replace their grain with garden and kitchen scraps, no matter how many of them you have. You want to supplement them. They will eat that stuff first. They will eat insects first. They will eat green leafy things first, and then they will eat the grain. So you never want to completely replace your grain, but you can dramatically reduce their consumption when they are consuming other things, either free ranging or garden and kitchen scraps. A couple of things that you probably shouldn't feed to chickens. Raw potatoes, they're suggested not to feed to chickens. We throw a few in, potato peelings. I don't peel a lot of potatoes. Maybe for a potato salad I'll peel them, but other than that we eat the skins. So they don't get a lot of potato peels. They love stuff with seeds, like when you're canning your tomatoes. They love tomato seeds. Oh my gosh. They love pepper seeds. Throw them your watermelon rinds. Just fruit is a nice treat for them. They will eat just about anything. Now keep in mind that chickens are omnivores, just like humans, and so that means they also have a fairly high protein requirement. And people who raise vegetarian fed chickens, that's really sad, because chickens aren't vegetarians. They're not herbivores. They're not cows. They're omnivores. They need a protein requirement. So buying mealworms, extra earthworms, huge, that's chicken candy. They just love them. We range our chickens behind our flurd, our cows and sheep together, and they will go through the cow patties and eat the larvae. They'll eat the beetles. They'll eat the crickets, grasshoppers, anything. They love that. So don't be afraid of feeding your chickens meat scraps. John goes fishing basically 12 months out of the year, and when he comes home and cleans the fish, our chickens get the fish guts. We feed some to the cats, but the carcasses, like the skeleton and stuff, we feed to the chickens. They love to pick the bones and stuff off of that. You will have absolutely just the skeleton left. That's the only thing that'll be left when the chickens are done. So don't be afraid of feeding animal protein to your chickens. Don't feed poultry to your chickens. You don't want to feed the same species to them. But if you have uh, pork fat, for example. If you have some pork fat, and you can put that in your chicken feed. They'll eat that up. They'll appreciate that extra protein. So I am not an advocate for vegetarian fed chickens. I think that's a horrible thing to do to an omnivore. But just be careful with what you're feeding them. It doesn't have to be cooked. You have a meat scrap that you trim some beef off and you're making stew, for example. You can feed that to your chickens. That's fine. They'll love it. Forage we talked about. They love forage. They will go out and they will eat that. The smaller, the better. So do not put chickens out in 2-foot high grass and expect them to mow your grass. They won't do it. But if you want to put them out in shorter stuff, they will eat those young tender shoots. They'll love it. They'll fertilize. They'll dethatch. You'll have a great looking lawn, and you can owe it all to your chickens. In the wintertime, we feed ours, like I said, some hay. We'll bring in some alfalfa every once in a while, a square alfalfa bale to give them a little extra treat. And so they like that stored forage in the wintertime too. Don't be afraid to throw in some hay or some alfalfa as winter forage. Now, supplements. Because we are feeding a whole grain diet to our chickens, we need to add some supplements. And again, we feed these free choice as well. So we have a small feeder or container that has their mineral in it, and we feed NutriBalancer from I'm drawing a blank. We feed NutriBalancer. It's the poultry NutriBalancer. Oh, who makes it? See, John orders this. This is why I can't remember. Anyway, you can Google NutriBalancer. And so we feed that in a separate container. And then we have a separate container for salt, and we feed Redmond salt, the mineralized salt. And then we also have a separate container for oyster shell. You don't want to mix these three together because you don't. Salt is probably the one they need the least of, but it's probably the most important. So you don't want them to limit their consumption of oyster shell because they already have enough salt. So we want to make sure that they can access as much mineral as they need without being limited by the salt. And there are some times when our chickens will just go to town on the salt and they'll eat a lot of it. And there are other times they don't touch the salt. So we always want to have it available, mineral, salt, and oyster shell, always available. They can, as John says, self-medicate as they need. If one hen, needs more minerals, she can access that. If one needs more oyster shell, she can access that as she needs. So we want to keep it always available, always in front of them. Keep your feeders full. You don't just have to be full. They have to have something in them. So you want to have your feeders full. You want to have your supplements full. Make the hens choose, and they will take care of themselves. They will self-medicate. They will self-treat diseases. And people often ask me, like, well, how do you treat diseases in your chickens? We don't have any. Like, I can't remember a disease we've had in chickens. We've never had any. So we really just want to make sure that they have the ability to regulate themselves. Make it as natural as possible. If we give everything to them, like in a commercial feed, everything at one consistent rate, maybe one hen needs more of something that she's not getting. And that's when you start seeing illnesses or injuries creep up, is when they're not getting their nutritional needs met. So any questions about feed? I have a couple pictures of feeders. This is an old style one. If you have a question about feed, type it in as I'm talking about feeders. This is an old style one. You can get these at, I've seen them at antique stores. You can get them at farm sales for next to nothing. Like, you can get them for $1. So this one, it has the wires on the top that prevents the billing out, and then you just fill it, in the tray style feeder. We like tray style feeders for our hens. It keeps the feed contained. We don't use feeders for our broilers. We make them eat off the ground, but they're more food driven. They won't leave a single kernel behind, where laying hens will. So we want to have feeders on the pasture. We use this kind of a feeder. In the hoop house, we have a tub style feeder, similar to the first one that I showed, but much bigger. And so we like these out on the range. They're easy to move. We fill them every day. It works pretty well. This is one that's been floating around on the internet lately, and this one is a PVC style pipe. Now, the reason I share this one, it prevents the billing out. See them on the left side there. They're they're pecking at it, but they can't bill it, they can't slide it up and over the lip there. And then you could fill each of these with a different grain or have something smaller for your minerals and supplements and salt. So I think it's a good idea, it's kind of a starting point to what you could do and how you could do things. But it's been floating around on the internet. I think it's a pretty cute idea. It's not big enough for our operation, but someone with something smaller, it's absolutely viable, and all the parts are available at your local home supply store. Any questions on feed before I talk about choosing chicks? All right. If you do have one, please put it in. Let's talk about choosing chicks. How do I know what to raise? So this is a picture of my then 2-year-old son just staring at all the chickens in the catalog, all the possibilities he could order. Do you want chickens for eggs and egg production? Is that your priority? If you do, there are breeds that are for egg production. A lot of them are the leghorn type, and they'll put a lot of different names in front of them: white leghorn, star leghorn. Any of the leghorn types, those are your conventional egg factory chicken breeds. They will lay a lot of eggs. Like a leghorn can lay 330 eggs a year. What you get in egg production, you will lose in other areas, and one of those areas is vitality. Um, they're not very hardy. They tend to be very high strung and nervous. They're not a calm, docile chicken. John and I refer to them as high octane chickens. They eat a lot of feed, they lay a lot of eggs, and it's go, go, go. They're not a very relaxed chicken. So if egg production is your primary method of having eggs, we want a lot of eggs for our family. You can look into those breeds. There's some heritage breeds hens that come very comparable to those leghorn types. Rhode Island Reds, Black Australorps. The ones we raise are usually higher egg layers, but a more vigorous chicken, the heritage breeds. So those Black Australorps, Rhode Island Reds, Buff Orpingtons, Barred Rocks, those lay a large number of eggs, but they're a bigger bodied, more docile hen. Right now we have Buff Orpingtons as our first year hens. They're 1 year old now. They've really been a good chicken, very docile, very calm. We've really enjoyed them. Our Rhode Island Reds are fine too, but these Buffs they're even more docile than the Rhode Island Reds. Do you want chickens for entertainment? And by entertainment, I lump in there, do you want your kids to have a 4-H project? Do you want them to show chickens at the fair? There's some rules regarding showing chickens at the fair. For example, Americanas, they're the Easter eggers. They lay the blue-green eggs. We've raised them. We like them. They're a little flighty. They're a little more wild. They don't lay as many eggs, but they're beautiful. Like if I just had a home flock, like if all I wanted chickens for was just for my family, I would raise Americanas. You can't show them. They're not eligible for showing in 4-H or any other poultry show because they're a non-standardized breed, and so that means there's no breed standard. There's nothing to judge the animal to. So if you want a 4-H project, don't get Americanas. And a lot of hatcheries will tell you that, not for exhibition is how they put it. And so the Americanas are beautiful. They're beautiful hens, and they're come in every color and pattern of the rainbow, and they lay gorgeous eggs. You can't show them. So again, keep in mind, why do you want these hens? What's your primary purpose, and what considerations do you want to take into consideration? For example, do you want beautiful chickens? The silkies, the cochins, they have feathered feet, they have big crests on their heads, any color of the rainbow. Like there's a chicken to satisfy whatever you're looking for. There's one that's pure black, even its like mouth is black. It's anything you want in a chicken you can find. So when you're selecting for eye appeal, if you want, the silkies, for example, they're smaller chicken, they'll lay a smaller egg, they won't lay as many eggs. You may get one, two, maybe three eggs a week out of those, and they won't be very big, but they're really fun to look at. They're small, they're cute, they're beautiful. So, what's your primary purpose in having chickens? That determines what kind of chick you should get. Most hatcheries are really good about explaining chickens, what it's for, what kind of eggs it lays, how many eggs it'll lay. They're also good in this area of the country talking about winter hardiness. A lot of them will talk about they're good foragers or they don't forage very well. So just read through your hatchery notes. Ask somebody, who do you get your chicks from? What do you get? How do you like them? Um, don't be afraid to call a hatchery, request a catalog. Everybody will send you a catalog. The one that Henry's looking at in this picture is the Whelp hatchery catalog. And Whelp has a color photo, as you can see, for every chicken. They have the rooster and the hen and the chicks pictured so that you can see what they look like, both the rooster and the hen, and then what they look like as chicks. And so Whelp is a wonderful hatchery for information. I have never ordered chicks from them, I'm sad to say. But we love getting their catalog because it really talks about the different breeds and shows good and bad, and depending on what you're looking for, which breed would work for you. So when you get your chicks, we ordered ours through the mail, so they come in a box. You can see there's my two kids about 4 years ago, and we didn't even have the little one yet. And so they are checking the chicks at the post office to make sure that they're all there and doing well. So you can order from a hatchery, and we do that. That's where we get our chicks from. Whelp is just like you spelled it, Ariana. WELP. And you can just request a catalog. They have a beautiful catalog. Stromberg's is another good one that I have not ordered from, but I like their catalog. I order other stuff from them. Poultry bags for our broilers. I ordered leg catchers. What else have I ordered from them? I go to them for my poultry supplies and not chicks, just because they're a little more expensive for the number that I need. But Stromberg's is another good one. They're out of Minnesota. Strombergs. Stromberg's. They're a good one too. Murray McMurray's website is pretty good. If you want to look online, their website's pretty good about information on their chicks as well. So we order from a hatchery. We get our laying hens right now from Ridgeway in Ohio. Ridgeway is for farms. They offer quantity discounts, etc. If you're looking for small quantities, backyard type quantities, the farm style hatcheries are not yours. Stromberg's, Whelp, Murray McMurray, those will all send you, 5 chicks, 3 chicks. We use Hoover's in Iowa and we use Ridgeway in Ohio. Neither one of them will send you less than 25. So, and they're all the same breed. And they don't have very many breeds because they want the ones that farmers use, not the ones that the fanciers use. So if you want, looking for a particular breed, some of those rarer breeds are the Bantams or Silkies or Cochins, Murray McMurray, Whelp, Stromberg's, that's where you'll find those, and you can get the quantities that you want. You can go to the farm store, and right now I'm sure they have stuff in the farm store, chicks and geese and turkeys and all that stuff. Like I said in the brooding webinar, I don't advocate going to a farm store just because I want to know how they're handled. I want to choose the chicks that I want, and so I avoid the farm store. There are a possibility you can probably get them for fairly reasonable, but they're not my favorite. You can hatch your own. You can buy fertile eggs from a hatchery. You can buy fertile eggs from a farmer and get a incubator, and you can hatch your own. Great if you have kids and you want to do that as a project. Our kindergarten teacher is doing it in our local school, and she wanted to know if we could take any extras, and yeah, we'll take them. So we get a fair amount of shall we say, poultry cast-offs. People buy chicks for their kids for Easter. I don't know why you would, but it's animal abuse. But we'll take them when they're done with them. And so you can hatch your own. It's very easy to do. You can buy fertile eggs. We sell fertile eggs because we have our roosters with our hens. I don't guarantee that they're all going to hatch, so we sell them at the same price we sell our eating eggs as. When you buy fertile eggs from a hatchery, they will ship you the eggs, and then they have, some of them put a 70% guarantee on them or something like that. But hatching your own is one way to get chicks. You can also buy ready-to-lay pullets, and there are a few hatcheries that will also sell ready-to-lay pullets. Stromberg's will. You'll pay for them. I think last time I looked, they were $20 some a bird. But if you don't want to bother with chicks, if you want to just get 3 hens to put in your backyard, plunking down $75 and getting 3 chickens that are going to start laying in the next month is probably a good investment. So ready-to-lay pullets are available. You can buy chickens from a farmer. Our Rhode Island Reds this is their last year of production this fall. We're going to butcher them as stewing hens. But if you came to me and said, boy, Annie, I'd really like, 4 hens. Would you sell me 4 hens? I would sell you 4 hens. So talk to farmers, and if they have a couple extra hens that they'd be willing to sell you, I'm sure most of them would. So there's lots of ways to get chickens. You don't have to get a hatchery. You don't have to get them at the farm store and start with chicks. If you'd like to do that, they're fun and it's easy to do. But if you just want some chickens and you want some eggs fairly soon, ready-to-lay pullets or buying some older hens from a farmer is a great way to go. Brooding and growing. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on brooding because we did that as a whole webinar before, and please access that one if you have any brooding questions. Just to let you know, there's lots of different ways to do it. The way we used to do it, is on the left, and you can buy a kit to do it yourself on the right, so you're not missing anything. They have everything included in there for you, so you don't need to start from scratch. There's helpful advice. There's kits to buy. It's easy to do. And growing. So you want to grow these out. It takes 16 to 26 weeks for a pullet chick to start laying eggs. And depending on when you get that chick, when that chick is hatched, that determines when it will probably start laying. So if you don't get your chicks until July, you will probably not get eggs until March or April. We get our laying hen chicks as the first batch. In fact, they're coming a week from Friday, as our laying hens are coming. So we get ours in April, and then they will start laying. We'll get the first eggs maybe the end of August, and then the bulk of them will start in September, and then by October we're starting to get quite a few pullet eggs. But it takes we usually plan 6 months before we're really getting a steady supply of these eggs. And just like anything, when she first starts to lay eggs, it'll be fits and starts. There'll be tiny eggs, there'll be bigger eggs. It'll be it's humorous when they start laying, because we'll start getting the pullet eggs and be like, oh boy, here they start. We're getting some odd ones. So that's a lot of investment. It's a lot of investment in time. It's a lot of investment in labor, and you don't have any eggs. That's why starting with ready-to-lay pullets or buying some hens from a farmer gets you eggs right away. And so it may be hard, if you're selling this to your kids saying, and we're going to get eggs from these chickens, and they have to wait 6 months for the first egg. It can be kind of defeating. So just to let you know that it's not next week we'll have eggs. It takes a while to grow that chick out. And during that time, you want to make sure they have good nutrition. You want to make sure that her needs are met. Even when she's not laying eggs, she's growing and preparing her body to lay eggs. The better nutrition and diversity and forage that you can be getting them during their growing time leads to healthy, long-lived, and productive hens. You don't want to limit them during this growth period, because that will limit their egg-laying ability. Speaking of eggs, let's talk about eggs. This is the anatomy of an egg, and I won't go through every single part of this, but this is all the parts. This is what's on the inside of the egg. This is what you're growing, and this is the good stuff. And so I want to point out the air pocket at the bottom. If you see that little bump in the lining, that's the air pocket. The shell of an egg is porous. So you don't want to store your eggs by stuff that smells bad because the smell can pass through air passes through the shell. And so as an egg ages, it will um, transpire. It'll release some water. An egg is 75% water. So it will release some water through that porous membrane, and that size of that air pocket will increase. And so fresh eggs, if you've ever tried to hard boil and peel a fresh eggs, they're buggers. They're horrible to peel. They don't peel nice and cleanly because they have a very small air pocket in the bottom. And so as that egg ages, that air pocket increases, and then there's a little air that goes around the membrane, around that inner lining of the shell, and that gives you your easy to peel hard-boiled eggs. So I always take a dozen eggs. You have to think in advance when you have your own eggs. So I take a dozen hard-boiled eggs and I hide them in the bottom of my fridge, and we don't eat them for a week. And then that is my hard-boiling eggs. So I have 2 dozen eggs in my fridge right now that are going to be our Easter eggs that we're going to dye. But I have kept those for the past week because I want an aged egg. So if you're going to hard boil them and you want to make something pretty like deviled eggs, you want an older egg. If you're just going to make an egg salad sandwich and it really doesn't matter what your eggs look like when you peel them, by all means use a fresh egg. You can hard boil a fresh egg. It's still delicious. But just know that when you're peeling them, you're going to have an issue. So when we're talking about eggs, those are our eggs. That's my hand. How long will a hen lay? The first year that she lays, so I'll talk about our year. We get them in April. They start laying in September. She will lay all winter long. And that's why we get hens every single year, hen chicks every single year, because we want those new hens to be starting laying in the fall and lay all winter. Because the older hens are going to take a break in the winter when they molt. And the molt is just like a snake. When they molt and they get a whole new skin, the chickens are replacing their feathers. And this does not happen just in a day. Like, she doesn't just poof, all her feathers fall out. They replace their feathers in an order. It's actually kind of cool to watch. In a certain order, and while she's doing that, she will lay far less than normal, or she will probably stop laying altogether. Rare is the hen that will keep laying during molt, and that's just very taxing on her body. So while she's replacing those feathers, she will quit laying for the molt. A lot of people say they'll quit laying in the winter because of the daylight. That's not necessarily true. They're quitting because of the molt. And so our hens don't have any supplemental heat. They don't have any supplemental light, and they lay all winter long. They just quit when they molt. And not all of your hens will molt at the same time. So you don't have to get new eggs or new chickens every year. We do, just as management for our large quantity. I see we have a question. Yay! Isn't it how much does a hen weigh? Yeah, kind of. Um, when those leghorn type breeds, they're very small.
Annie,
They're like maybe 2 pounds a
it's a
hen.
joke. How much is the hen weigh?
Yes.
Isn't that a joke? I'm sorry.
Oh,
Do-
oh, I don't know.
you said something, and I'm
Okay,
like,
I was gonna tell you.
it's like, how much does a hen weigh? That's kind of a joke. Sorry, I'm just
Oh,
trying to be funny here.
well, there is a relationship between the heavier a hen is and how long she'll keep laying.
Really? Oh,
So,
that's good then.
great. That's why I thought you were asking. I'm like, oh, great job, great segue.
Good, good. So go ahead and answer that question then.
So the Leghorn type breeds are small. They're, like I said, they're high octane. They're nervous. They lay a lot of eggs. But the conventional egg farms will burn them out fairly quickly, about 10 months. They don't even make it a year. And so they burn out, meaning they've used up all their body reserves in laying these eggs. So we use heavier breeds, the heritage breed hens, the Astralorps, the Buff Orpingtons, that are bigger bodied hen, because every day that she lays an egg, she's laying a percentage of her body weight. And the bigger the hen, the smaller that percentage is and the less taxing it is on her body. she'll lay longer in days rather than more eggs in a shorter amount of time. So she will lay that whole first year, and so you'll get about 16 months of egg laying, and then she'll molt and take 2 to 6 weeks off. It kind of depends on the chicken. It takes her about 23 to 32 hours to form an egg, and so faster if you're a leghorn type breed, longer if you're a heritage type breed. And so the average, what we use to compute, eggs per chicken, is that she's going to lay 2 eggs every 3 days. So basically we figure 4 eggs a week. We always tend to figure a little conservatively. So we figure one hen will lay 4 eggs a week. So if you're a family that eats a lot of eggs, love eggs, you're going to need more than one hen. If you're a family that eats very few eggs, you don't really eat eggs as a meal, they're usually an ingredient in something, then you don't need very many. We have egg customers who say, oh, we eat a lot of eggs, I'll take 2 dozen, and we sell eggs once a month. Like 2 dozen eggs a month? My kids eat 2 dozen eggs for breakfast. Like a meal of scrambled eggs in my house is probably 2 dozen eggs, and we've gone as many as 3 dozen if they're real hungry. So it just depends on your family's needs and how many that you want. Is how many birds you should have. But we generally figure 2 eggs every 3 days, or about 4 eggs a week. How do you store your eggs? Boy, if you want to start a fight about eggs, just talk about whether you should wash them or not, and whether you should store them on your counter or in your fridge. So here's the Carlson family rule of thumb. In Europe, you can't buy a refrigerated egg. They're all sold warm on room temperature on the counters. But you also can't wash an egg in Europe. If you wash the egg, it has to go into food processing and go into like cake mixes and stuff. You can't sell a washed egg. So when a chicken lays an egg, the last thing she does is put this film of protective coating over her egg. And it's referred to as the bloom. And so that is kind of like an antimicrobial coating. So even though I told you that the shell was porous and smells could get through, etc., she puts that film over the top to protect it from bacteria and all that other stuff. So when we have unwashed eggs, we will store them on the counter. When they are washed, then they go into our fridge. And so we don't wash an egg unless we need to, meaning if it's a clean egg, no dust, no dirt, no manure of any kind. If it's perfectly clean, I will not wash that egg. If it has dirt or something on it, then we wash the egg. So I know of farmers who sell all unwashed eggs, no matter what is stuck to them, and I just can't do that. Like, I will sell you clean eggs. Some of them may have been washed, some of them may have not. It just depends on whether it's clean or not. We have found we dye our Easter eggs, our brown eggs, like you see in the picture. And so one year we were dyeing eggs. The first year I was dyeing eggs with the kids. And some of our eggs, like the dye was wiping off. I was like, well, this dye is garbage. Like, what's going on here? And then I realized those were the eggs I had not washed. Those were the clean eggs. So that bloom, that coating that they put on their eggs, resisted the dye, which we know, when you dye an Easter egg, some of that dye goes through the shell onto the white, right? But these eggs, because they were not washed, resisted even the dye. Like the dye didn't even penetrate them, and I could wipe it off with my thumb. So that coating is really important. So the rule in our house is if it's not washed, it can sit on the counter. If it is washed, it goes into the fridge. And all of our eggs for sale are stored in the fridge once they're cleaned. And so even if they haven't been washed, but once they're packaged, all eggs go into the fridge, and I refrigerate our sale eggs. How do you know if an egg is fresh? If you find, this happens to us sometimes, if we have a hen that has disappeared and she has laid eggs into a nest and we find a nest. What is this? Where did this come from? We don't know how old those eggs are. Those eggs are not going into our customer chain. Like, we don't even risk it. We have a separate bucket for them. Like, those are the eggs that we eat. And so how do I know if they're fresh? How do I know if they've been there for 2 months or 2 days? So you can do the float test, and if an egg sinks to the bottom and lays on its side, that's fresh. If it starts to tilt upwards, that means that air pocket has gotten bigger and it's a little older. And so if it stands straight up, that's an old egg. If it floats, that is an egg. Don't even break it because it will be sulfide up your nostrils. So if it floats, don't even eat them. But if it's just kind of standing up on one end, those are still okay to eat. So just give them the float test. It's really easy. If you forget what I've told you, you want to see pictures, you can just Google it. There's plenty of information out there. So frequently asked questions. Questions we get asked all the time. The first one is, how many chickens do I need? It depends on what you use eggs for. We figure 4 eggs a week and figure out how many eggs your family eats, and how many you'd like to give away, share with a neighbor, etc. So always err on the side of too many, because I don't know, we've never had too many eggs in our house. The next question we get asked a lot is, do I need a rooster? And the answer is no. Just like a woman ovulates without a man present, a chicken will lay an egg without a rooster present. It's her ovulation. And so you do not need a chicken. And particularly if you live with neighbors within earshot, you should not have a rooster. They're can be mean. We don't tolerate any mean roosters on our farm. They go immediately in the stew pot, should they exhibit any aggressive tendencies. So the ones that we've got 6 roaming around right now, I think. 2 are 2 older roosters that we really like. They're really hardy for us. When we start doing some selective breeding of our hens, these are the 2 roosters we're going to use. So those 2 stay around. And then we've got 4 or so, maybe more, Buff Orpington roosters. We ordered all pullets from our hatchery, and we got like a dozen roosters, which is higher than the average, but what are you going to do? They're here. So if you order from a hatchery and you happen to get a rooster, don't keep it. Your neighbors will not like it. You will not like it. You can call Annie and say, can I bring my rooster to the Carlson Home for Wayward Roosters? And you can bring him here, and we have taken many a rooster, and we will eat him. So do not bring him here thinking you will come visit him every year on his birthday. You will not. We will probably eat him, is the rule of thumb on this farm. But we will take them and help you out of your bind. Where should you buy your chickens? We talked about that. I recommend, if you're just going to get a couple of hens, buy them from a farmer, because they can help answer your questions. So if you bought hens from me, you could call me and ask questions. You can still call me and ask questions no matter who you buy them from. But if you buy them from a farmer, you have somebody that you can call who has chicken experience. Hatcheries are really good at hatching chickens. They don't necessarily raise them. So buying from a farmer, buying from someone you know, it's just a great way to ask questions and that sort of thing. How long do hens live? Well, hens live a long time. Our hens live until they've had 3 laying seasons. And so, like I said, the Rhode Island Reds are on their way out this year. That's not because they quit laying. It's because they lay fewer eggs, but they're bigger. They'll lay jumbo eggs that 3rd year. But after the 3rd year, they end up eating more than they produce in eggs. And so for a business like ours, it's good business sense to rotate out your hens after that 3rd year. If you are a family and just love having chickens and you're not trying to make money on them like we are, you can keep your chickens as long as you want. They'll keep laying. They'll just lay less and less. My mom bought some Barred Rock chicks when I was born, and those chickens lived until I was 14. So chickens can live a long time. Now, did they lay very much those last 5 years? Probably not. We probably didn't even get an egg from them. We had a big flock of chickens, so we couldn't tell. But they lived 14 years. So how long do they productively lay? We give ours 3 years. You've probably got another 3 years of pretty good laying out of them, which is why it's fine to buy some 2 and 3 year old chickens from a farmer, because they'll still lay enough eggs, but just not at the production level that a farm needs to be viable. The big one, do I need permission to keep chickens? That all depends on where you live and who your neighbors are. So there are towns. I have friends in one. I will not reveal the name of the town. That's on the books say no, you cannot have chickens. But these friends also have friends, one of whom is a police officer. So they said, listen, Officer Craig, his name happened to be Officer Craig, uh, what would happen if we had some chickens? And they're friends, so he wouldn't, arrest them for the thought of it. But he said, what would happen if we had chickens? And Officer Craig said, well, according to the zoning, it's not legal to have chickens. However, I nor neither of my, none of my colleagues would ever arrest someone for having chickens. Uh, so his advice was, if your neighbors don't have a problem with it, we won't have a problem with it. Because who would call it in? Your neighbors. So the best way is to, A, not have a rooster and give away that you have chickens, because a rooster will give away your location. Hens, buy hens, get nice quiet hens. You want docile is the word that they use in the hatchery, the docile chickens. So you want nice quiet hens. You want to feed them well so they're not, looking for feed. You want to have a secure location for them. They're not out roaming the neighborhood. And frankly, this is my best piece of advice. You want to have enough chickens that you give your neighbors free eggs. Because there's nothing that keeps a neighbor happy that you have chickens than fresh eggs every week or so. So do you need permission to keep chickens? In a lot of municipalities, yes. But that permission doesn't necessarily have to come from the mayor's office. That permission can come from just a couple of neighbors who like what you're doing and like your kids and like fresh eggs. How do I bring in new chickens? So if you want to add chickens to your flock, if you want to transport chickens, we always transport our chickens in the dark. If we transport them in the daylight, they know we're there and they're upset, and moving them to a new location stresses them out. So we moved up here to this farm 3 years ago, and we had to move over 100 laying hens with us. They went in a stock trailer and we hauled them up. And we had to do it during the day, and they quit laying for 6 weeks. Quit. Not one egg. Nobody laid. They were stressed out. They were mad. They were crabby. So after that, we decided, okay, well, we have to handle these chickens. We have to move them. We have to move out the pasture, to move them back in. How do we do this? And so moving them at night, they're quiet, they're sleepy, they don't really know what's going on, and they wake up in their new surroundings and go, look at that. Where's the dinner? So they don't stress out. They're very calm. They're easy to catch. There's not a lot of feathers flying. And so we just move them in the dark. And so if you were to buy chickens from me, I would say, come up in the evening, right before dark. We'll catch them. We'll put them in a dog crate or a paper box or something. And you take them back and put them in your chicken house that's ready to go in the dark. And they wake up and there's no big deal, and they'll probably keep laying. So that's how you bring in new chickens. That's how we introduce new chicks to our laying hen flock, is we do it at night. And then they wake up and they go, hey, nice to see you. Good morning. Hello, how you doing? Like, they don't even realize they're new. Whereas if we threw the new ones in there, they'd be like, oh my gosh, what is this? They'd have a fit, which we've done. So now we've learned our lesson. We do all of our chicken integration, moving, whatever we need to do with the chickens, we do it at night. Your questions. What questions do you have? You can contact us anytime. All of our contact information is on our website, morningjoyfarm.com. You can access us through Facebook. We're just Morning Joy Farm on Facebook. We take questions anytime on any topic, chickens included. So, questions now.
Well, other than how much does a hen weigh? No. Ariana, you have any other questions before we let Annie go? We've gone over our time a little bit here today, but oh, there it is. She's asking a winter high tunnel question for you.
Oh dear. The high tunnel. So I don't plant. The high tunnel is not my garden production area. So I don't plant. Well, Raw manure application, according to the organic standards, I believe is 45 days. And so it's 45 days before we'd harvest anything off of our high tunnel, no matter what we put in it. But my method is to one, take off the bedding. So we've taken off the bedding. All that's left is the compost. Now, do we get absolutely every speck? No, but we get the vast majority of it. Secondly, I don't plant things that I would eat that grow on the ground. So, for example, I do not plant lettuce in there. I do not plant radishes. I don't plant the stuff that's in the soil. Potatoes, I don't plant that in there. Um, if I plant a growing crop, vining crop, say cucumbers, I would trellis them just to keep them up off the soil. I also mulch heavily, both fabric mulch and straw mulch, hay mulch. And then, so I use my high tunnel for tomatillos and peppers because I can recreate Georgia in the high tunnel. So the high tunnel, I don't raise vegetables as a profit stream. It's simply to feed my family. We have a ridiculously sized garden, but we eat a lot of it. And so right now the high tunnel is 20 by 24, which I said we're maxing it out this winter. We're going to need a new high tunnel. But for now, it fits, it's what we have. So it's only 20 by 24. I pack it full of peppers, tomatillos against the back wall, and that's what I raise. So the new FSMA rules would like us to do 180 days. I don't think they're going to get away with that. I think the new FSMA rules might go to 60, maybe 90, maybe 90. But what we and many others have urged FSMA to do is to follow the organic standard, which I believe is 45 days. So I don't grow. Last year I tried some strawberries in there. It didn't work very well. That's the closest I've gotten to eating something off the ground, was some strawberries. So, I kind of take that into account because I did have live animals in there, but I do what I can to minimize it. And like I said, I'm not selling it for sale, so it's just me, my fam. Any other questions?
All right. Well, wow, that was really great and very informative, and we appreciate that a lot. I'm not sure. Let's see who we got going on next week. We may have had to cancel that. It might have been High Tunnels because there's a meeting that's been called that we've been all called to. And so check the website. It has current information and look for the recording, which we will put online sometime this afternoon. And thank you very much, Annie, for all of your time today and your
You're welcome.
expertise.